Hi, welcome to the Shepherd's Rest Doc Talk. This is episode 112B.
I'm Cam and this is Julie.
Yes, this is the Haftarah discussion of this week's Torah portion, and it is Isaiah 61:10 through 63:9, but we're going to go all the way back to 61:1.
Okay.
Because the first 9 verses, I think, are very important to hook with it, and it's also considered the Messianic reading. All right, this is the 7th of 7 consolations from the 9th of Av. We're in the very last one.
So again, we're at the end, but it's
Yes.
really the beginning.
Yes, and I know that this is a double portion, but this is the only one we're doing today. And trust me, this is going to be really long anyway because there's so much to talk about. It's so good. It's the last one. So it's like, ooh, let's finish strong these 7 consolations. All right, well, with all that said, let's dive into 61:1 and start this thing. All right, 61:1 says, "The Spirit of the Master Yahweh is upon me, because Yahweh has anointed me to bring good news to the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim release to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of Yahweh and the day of vengeance of our Elohim, to comfort all who mourn." Whoa, wow. We could literally spend the next 30 minutes just in those verses right there. So, but I want to first go to Luke 4:16. All right, Luke 4, we have Yeshua returning to Nazareth in the synagogue, okay? And this is right after, if you were to read Luke 3, you would see, well, first you would see the genealogy.
Right.
This is the beginning of Luke. The genealogy proving who he is. Then you see Luke 4 where he is given the Holy Spirit after his baptism, goes into the wilderness, and you have the testing by Hasatan.
Okay.
Now, after all of the testing, then he shows up in Nazareth proclaiming who he is.
Right.
Right? And I love that because he starts with his people.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You
and
know,
then it goes,
this is the first time. Now, while it says he went all through the Galilee preaching the good news,
right,
this was the first time to our knowledge that he proclaimed who he was.
Right. And it's funny because, you have people like, he never said who he was. Like, he said who he was all the time, if you know Torah.
We're going to read it right now.
All right, go for it.
Well, I'm not going to repeat the verse, but listen to what he says here. This is the first thing I want to talk about. "And he came to Nazareth where he had been brought up, and according to his practice, or his custom, he went into the congregation on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. And the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him, and having unrolled the scroll, he found the place where it was written." And then he reads what we just read.
Right.
All right, the first thing I want to talk about is, do you notice how it says that this was his custom?
Yes.
To go into the synagogues on the Sabbath. That was the custom. And to stand up to read. So that tells me a couple of things. For one, they were reading the Torah portions at the time of Messiah, and he was standing up to read.
And the Haftarah.
And the Haftarah. However, it's not known whether or not there were set Haftarah readings.
Gotcha.
There were Haftarah readings, and it had to be at least 12 verses. But I don't even know, did they have verses at that time? I think it was just a scroll.
It's a good question.
I know right now it has to be a minimum of 12 that you have to read in a synagogue. But at that time, I'm not sure. The point is, if it was, then it was this week that he read that. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
what kind of tells us around the time that his...
Right, and this floats in between.
Right. But otherwise, it doesn't matter. The point is, he read this for the sole reason to proclaim who he was.
Right.
Now, in his reading, he stops at to proclaim the acceptable year of Yahweh. Now, because this was his first coming.
Right.
A lot of people tend to miss that, but he stopped right there because the next thing it says is, "And the day of vengeance of our Elohim, to comfort all who mourn." That is yet to happen.
Right.
That will be at his second coming.
Right.
So I love that he stopped right there.
You know, when you read that again, I just suddenly was like, bling, over to Revelation 6, where it talks about, they're waiting how much longer.
Oh, yeah.
And that's exactly what he's saying. That, I mean, you just read that the day of vengeance for our God is to comfort
all who mourn. You know, it's funny that you say that, because you see in 61:1 where it says, "Because Yahweh has anointed me to bring good news to the meek."
Right.
That word meek also means afflicted, and in the Hebrew it's Nitzavim, and it's used frequently in the Psalms of those who wait faithfully for the Lord's salvation despite their current duress.
So in Matthew, when he says the meek shall inherit the earth,
yes,
I'm
they're
sure
the
that's
ones,
the same word.
Yes, it is. They are the ones that are waiting for his salvation.
Even
that
in suffering.
Yes.
Which he says, if you suffer like me.
Right.
Oh,
all right,
wow.
now let's think about what you talked about in your Torah portion, and let's look at verse 3. It says, to appoint unto those who mourn in Zion, to give them embellishment for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, and the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. These are all indicative of people who are repenting.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
because when you realize you've done something, you know, the ashes, that's why the bad things happen, right? That's why the trials we have happens to us, right? To bring us to repentance. And isn't it James 1:2 that says, count it all joy when we fall into these temptations and these trials and different things, because that is what is going to bring us to repentance and cause us to put the ashes on our heads, so to speak,
and changing the clothes
and wearing the sackcloth and mourning, because we are kind of in mourning, just like the earth is in mourning, because we're waiting for the sons of God to be revealed. Yes.
Oh, that was one thing that I didn't talk about, but in this week's Torah portion, it talks about the heaven and earth as the witnesses, you know, and anyway, it just made me think of Romans, because Romans talks about that. We know how everyone's waiting, everyone's mourning and waiting. Get it together, people.
Yes.
Come on, live the blessing so that we can be, because in the Torah portion, all the curses actually, they tie into the land.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, no wonder the earth is going to be a witness, because they're actually dealing with the ramifications.
Right. And all of this Haftarah is dealing with the land as well.
It's the ramifications of our behavior.
And this is the after the ramifications, after they've gone through the trials, after they've gone through the exiles, this is the redemption part of not only the people but the land.
And like you said, with the break, waiting for the other half to happen, it hasn't happened. We're still in that cycle. Of learning, waiting to get to that point.
But what I love about it is Yeshua testified to, okay, that's him.
Right.
Now I'm stopping right here because the rest is going to be fulfilled later.
Right.
And then we can go and say, oh, okay. And now we can read the rest of it and see who it's for.
Right.
The ones who are waiting for his salvation, the redemption, the meek. We always wondered, what does meek mean? Oh, it's the weak people. No, it's those who are just
holding on.
Yes, they are barely holding on. Now let's think of Revelation.
Oh, yeah.
Revelation 3:9-ish. Don't quote me on that, but to the Church of Philadelphia. Yeah. You're barely hanging on. You have little power. Think about that. And then look at the end of verse 3. It says, and they shall be called trees of righteousness, a planting of Yahweh to be adorned. Now go to Psalms 1. We find the ones who are the trees of righteousness are the ones who refuse to stand in the counsel of the sinners and the scoffers, and they are doing the Torah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
And they take delight in it.
Yes.
Well, they enjoy it.
And I love that, because this is all defining itself through the rest of the scriptures. So we don't have to guess, oh, it's just the people who said this prayer. No, it's so much more than that.
Right, yeah.
And then when you move to 4, you have that group like you were talking about. 4 and 5. It says, and they shall rebuild the old ruins, raise up the former wastes, and they shall restore the ruined cities, the wastes of many generations. This is happening right now. But look in 5, it says, and strangers shall stand and feed your flocks, and the sons of the foreigner be your plowman and your vine dresser. We also see that now, because Israel for so many years hasn't taken that stand to do it. Strangers are doing it.
Right.
Foreigners are doing it. The people taking hold of Messiah are considered to be strangers and foreigners.
Right.
But this is also in the Messianic era, because the people of Elohim are going to be the priests to the Lord. Yeah. The strangers and the foreigners are going to be the ones doing all of this work.
Yeah.
All right, now remember, in the time of Isaiah, I'm not sure about this. I think the northern kingdom had already been conquered, but the southern kingdom hasn't yet.
Right.
So this is 100 years at least before the southern kingdom. I would say probably around the end of his career when he wrote these last few. But anyway, it says right here, instead of your shame, this is verse 7, instead of your shame and reproach, they rejoice a second time in their portion. Therefore, they take possession a second time in their land. Everlasting joy is theirs. So he's already describing 2 exiles and two returnings from exiles, which I think is pretty cool there. This is also hinting to a double portion. In the world to come, we get a double portion.
Right.
That's also another thing.
And there's the, that goes back with the Torah portion also, where it talks about there are these hints. It's not just in this world, but in the life to come. Like we said, that's not the concentration, because they understand here depends on there.
Yes.
So.
And here depends on what you do here.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't separate
both. Right. Now again, let's go back to 61:1.
Okay.
Because I just have one more thing to say. If you notice, if you go to Ezekiel 34:4, that's talking about the shepherds.
Right.
And all the things they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of what's being done right here. So almost like Ezekiel is saying to all the kings of Israel thus far, because now remember, Ezekiel's prophesying in Babylon.
Right, this is way after. Isaiah
it's all been done.
Right.
So he's saying, okay, all you shepherds that you were supposed to heal the sick, bind up the broken heart, do all of these things, and they failed. And this is also futuristic of what we're supposed to be doing to the nations. We're supposed to be acting on behalf of the Messiah, doing these things, and we are not being the proper shepherds that we should be.
And Jeremiah, I believe it's Jeremiah 23, 24, 25. It's somewhere in those chapters where the Lord's kind of scolding the shepherds because of they're not just not doing it. They're doing almost the opposite. They're harming the people.
Right.
They're misrepresenting the Lord. So
purposely misrepresenting the Lord. You see that happening today too.
So you have these major prophets, that are really hitting this topic of your leaders are not.
You're exactly right.
Doing right.
Now 62:1 is one of our favorite verses, all of us I'm sure. It says, "For Zion's sake I am not silent, and for Jerusalem's sake I do not rest, until her righteousness goes forth as brightness, and her deliverance as a lamp that burns. And the nations shall see your righteousness, and all sovereigns your esteem. And you shall be called by a new name, which the mouth of Yahweh designates." Now, we can prove from many scriptures in Revelation that that's the Church of Philadelphia, the Church of Smyrna gets a new name. At the end of Revelation, all those in Messiah get a new name. We can prove. However, I want to say this. In the 2nd century, the church father Ignatius, is that his name? Ignatius? He said that this proves that the new name given to God's people was Christianity. And anyone who was not called a Christian was not one of God's people because obviously they didn't get the new name. So they had to be completely separated from Judaism. Yes.
So ironically, this clearly says out of the mouth of the Lord.
Right. Not out of the mouth of Ignatius.
Yeah, or out of the mouth of the people who just gave the sarcastic hurtful name of Christian, which then later became, but still, so now man's dictating that name?
Well, yeah. But here's something really interesting that my husband and I talked about yesterday. I told him about this, and I read the whole thing, his whole speech that he gave, and I said, that was the 2nd century. That was before Constantine in the 3rd century, so this was already happening before Constantine, and I said, that's so surprising or something like that. And you know what he said to me? He said, so profound, because it made me go, oh, I get it. It made me get it on the opposite side of the coin. He said, so this guy said it, but Constantine's the one that had the authority and the backing to make it happen. And I said,
he paved the road.
I said, oh my gosh, you have no idea what you just said, because think about what we are doing right now by learning Torah and clinging to the promises of Yahweh. We're clinging to the promises, but when Yeshua returns, he's the one that has the authority and the backing to make it happen.
I like it.
So this is the spirit of Antichrist.
Yes.
I know. I was like, together we worked really well yesterday.
Oh, that is good.
What we said. Teamwork. Yes. What is going to work? All right. Let's move to 4. It says, no longer are you called forsaken, like in your Torah portion, and no longer is your land called deserted, but you shall be called Hesfitzibah.
Glad you're reading that.
And your land married, or Beola. Isn't that how you say that? Beola? Beulah, which means married. All right. So there's some really cool things that I saw about this, because this is kind of describing two marriages.
Okay.
That is what the sages say. This is describing two marriages, one of the people and one of the land. Because if you read in 5, it says, "For as a young man marries a maiden, so shall your sons marry you." He's speaking to Jerusalem, the land. Right. "And as the bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so shall your Elohim rejoice over you." So it's that remarriage of the bride. Now, another thing I saw here were kind of bookends, but I'm not going to talk about that. I want to talk about the names of these. Well, okay, so you have no longer are you called forsaken.
Right.
So forsaken is used, it means, the Hebrew word is azuva, and it means divorced woman.
Which makes sense because Isaiah is talking to the northern kingdom.
Well, he's talking to everybody. He's talking to everybody right here. He's not just talking to the northern kingdom.
Well, right, but what I mean is the South hasn't, they haven't experienced that yet.
No, they haven't. So this is the final redemption where you're going to have both come together, right? So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's not so much the land and the people as much as it is the northern and the southern. Because the northern is forsaken. Yes.
That is the land and the people, because there's not actually 10 tribes that disappear. It's 10 lands. It's the land that disappears.
Yes.
So that fits exactly with what you're saying.
Yes.
The land and the people.
Well, yes. I guess so. I guess it is talking about the land and the people. But I also saw the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, the spiritual aspect and the physical aspect.
Absolutely. I mean,
physically, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen spiritually also.
Right.
It's happening spiritually now. In other words, if there's a Zion and a Jerusalem, it's not till the very end that those places are, that this is going to be fulfilled.
Right, but so here's your Zion and here's your earth.
Yeah.
But we're going to have a shadow of it first.
Yes.
That shadow is going to be the two coming together. So this one, when it comes together, we already have an example of what it looks together.
Like. Yes. That kind of goes with the bookends, because you have the forsaken, then you have the deserted.
Right.
Then you have the my delight is in her.
Right.
Which is the Hefzibah, whatever. And then you have the married. So you have forsaken and married, and then you have those in the middle. You see what I mean? It's like the bookends.
Right.
That was kind of what I saw. But I love that about the two marriages, because the Lord's not going to remarry, but there is going to be a marriage of the land and a marriage of the people to Yahweh. And they were the forsaken people. I love it.
I love it.
Okay, I want to read 6 real fast. It says, "I have set watchmen on your walls, O Jerusalem, all the day and all the night continually, who are not silent. You who remember Yahweh, give yourselves no rest." And I thought, oh my goodness. All right, so there's so many discussions on who the watchmen are. Are they the prophets? Are they the kings? Are they the sages? Who's the watchers? And I would venture out to say it's all of us.
Yeah.
Because we're all watching in expectation for his return. Yeah. And we're going night and day because we're all over the world.
Yeah.
So there is no rest on those who are constantly calling back Yahweh. So I thought about the Amidah prayer. How many people around the world do the Amidah prayer every day, which calls for his return?
Yes.
Every single day.
And all different times of the day.
Yes.
All
around the world.
Literally.
Yes.
You could probably have a continuous thread of it if we can't. But when he hears it, it's probably just a
continual
thread.
Prayer.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, skipping down to 11, it says, "See, Yahweh has proclaimed to the end of the earth. Say to the daughter of Zion," I love this, "See, your deliverance has come. See, his reward is with him, and his work before him." That's Revelation 22:12.
Yep.
That's Yeshua when he says, "I come speedily, and my reward is with me."
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I love it because he's talking to Zion. It's the people that make up, who's going to make up New Jerusalem. I'm telling you.
So, now take that knowledge and go back and read Timothy, where he talks about, who are eagerly waiting for him to return and holding on.
Yes.
And he's going to give you the crown when he returns.
Yes.
This is where it's coming from. It wasn't just a made-up thing. He's like, oh, I get it. This is messianic. Messiah's come. Put them together. That's what he talks about. Yeah.
And then I'm going to end on 12. You can go read 63, but I'm running out of time. It says, "And they shall be called the set-apart people, the redeemed of Yahweh, and you shall be called, sought out, a city not forsaken." This is New Jerusalem.
Yes, it is.
New Jerusalem. This is in the end. This is exactly what our hope is in.
Right.
This is the race that we're running that Paul talked about. We're not running to get to just the Messianic kingdom.
Right.
We're running to get all the way to the end to be part of this group in the set apart city, the sought out city. That's what we're
it started
waiting for.
It started with Abraham.
Yes.
And in Hebrews 11, is where Abraham is the one who always looked for this city.
Yes.
And he's promised that he's going to see this city.
Mm-hmm.
So again, there's your full circle.
I love
it. It was
it.
promised with him. He didn't get to see it, and he will when this is done.
I love it. Very good. All right. Well, that is all I'm going to talk about today. There's a lot more to read. You have 63, 1 through 9. So I advise you, go read it. You will be blessed.
Yes.
Anyway.
Of course, it's the word.
Yes. I know, but it was so good. I've really enjoyed these 7 consolations leading up to the Feast of Trumpets. We're just getting our hearts ready.
Yes.
This is our hope. This is the prize that we're running that race for. And I just pray that each of you take some time to really get before the Lord and see what do we need to get right, what do we need to do here in this month of Elul leading up to the Feast of Trumpets.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will see you next week with episode 113, and we hope you have a fantastic week. Shalom!